Hello again. I wanted to do a type of walkthrough on setting up your persuasive essay, especially the thesis statement. And before I get into that, I want to give a disclaimer. These are my favorite methods. They are pretty standard and they should be a good skill set for you to have, but you may have an instructor in the future who expects something else. In that case, do whatever that person instructs you to do. So if you remember, my hypothetical paper topic is on ways to improve multicultural awareness at Blue Ridge. So, having said that, I'm going to get out my high-tech props, and hopefully the novelty of something so old-fashioned will hold your interest for a bit. So my research question is, what can Blue Ridge Community College do to improve multicultural awareness among students, faculty, and staff, and the surrounding communities? So I brainstormed some ideas based on my existing knowledge and experience, and I come up with a few. I can remember back when Blue Ridge had a holiday showcase, and some of these involved some multicultural aspects, like different Christmas traditions around the world, different winter holiday traditions from other cultures all together. It was very popular, but it was pretty complicated. It involved a lot of work and some liability issues. I also know of exchange students, so this would be an avenue to explore. But again, just thinking offhand, I know of a lot of complications with that one too. It's a lot of logistics to work through and liability again. Foreign films is another idea. I know because I've been around Duke and the 9th Avenue that's near their campus, there's a hookah bar that's really popular, and I've always been intrigued by it. I'd like to find out more about that. I can think of coffee house events where you could change each time you had one, and that would be really flexible and easy to do. I also think of lectures, which would be pretty easy to do, but I'm not sure if they would be that exciting for people. I don't know how many people would come to them. So with all those things in mind, I start researching. And again, these are not specific research findings. They're somewhat hypothetical, so keep that in mind. But I find a book on multicultural college programs. That would be good. I find a scholarly article on hookah bars and find out that they have bad health outcomes. So that's an important little thing to remember for my counter argument when I start setting those up. I look at the BRCC website and I see that we have an NAACP club. I want to find out more about that. I wonder about interviewing the Spanish instructor and looking into Latinx resources that he or she might have. I look at the newspaper and see that there are articles on Black history in Hendersonville. I also see in the newspaper notices about club meetings for things like the Scandinavian Club. And I want to talk to an STA member and see what the feasibility would be about some of these. Okay, so some of my general learnings after the research are that the current Blue Ridge website really focuses on job skills. There's not a lot about cultural opportunities. So there's definitely room for improvement there. If I look at the past on the website, I can see that they used to have a few multicultural offerings that were popular. From the reading I did with my research, I see all sorts of exciting ideas, but a lot of them have complications. So as I'm thinking of all these things, I kind of settle on the coffee house idea. The coffee house is relatively easy compared to like a festival. It's more fun than a lecture. It's inexpensive. It has a lot of advantages. So I'm really starting to feel good about that. I also noticed that there is interest just based on what I see in the newspaper. There are a lot of people interested in multicultural offerings, and that colleges have a lot of programs. Okay, so moving on with the coffee house idea, I'm going to work that into my thesis. So I'm going to give you some of my favorite thesis formulas. If you're a math type person, you might like to think of a thesis statement as a mathematical equation or something sort of like that. So my very favorite one I'm going to give you first. It includes the counter argument and the body paragraph, so it kind of organizes your essay for you. And that would start out with a phrase such as although, or while, or even though, and then give your counter argument, comma, and then say something like the best option is blank, which would be your proposal, because 1, 2, 3. So that kind of sets everything up, and it's kind of my fallback go-to formula for a thesis statement. There are a couple of variations on that. You could do something like the best way to blank is blank, even though, and then give your counter argument there. This does basically the same thing, although it doesn't set up your body paragraphs, but that's not a hard thing to do. And then another option is your proposal is a good whatever it is because 1, 2, 3. Now this one sets up your body paragraphs, but it doesn't give your counter argument. So you would need to keep that in mind as you're writing it and make sure that you do include your counter argument. Okay. So returning to my particular hypothetical essay, I come up with my thesis statement. While colleges across the United States have successfully used a variety of programs to improve multicultural awareness, the best way for Blue Ridge Community College to do so is by offering a monthly coffee house with events. Because it would be relatively inexpensive, it could use existing resources, and it would offer flexibility for organizers. So now we have our thesis statement, and the typical place for that to go is at the bottom of your first paragraph, your introductory paragraph. If you go back to Module 3, you will see opening ideas or hooks for a paragraph or essay. So I'm not going to do that right now, but you can go back to Module 3 and look at those if you want to. For my essay, my hypothetical essay, I am going to use a quote. And for the first paragraph, I need to connect that quote, which is my hook, to the thesis statement at the end of the paragraph. Okay, so let's look at how this might happen. Okay, I'm starting with a quote, which means I have triple checked it to make sure this person actually said this, and I can track down where he, in this case, said it, and the date, and I can put that on my works cited page. I am not taking this off of Facebook or something like that. All right. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. That's my hook. Then I'll go on. Marcel Proust, the famous French novelist, wrote this popular quote in 1923. The belief that one's life is enriched by new discoveries continues in 2021, almost 100 years later. Colleges have a tradition of promoting new discoveries by providing opportunity to explore other cultures. While colleges across the United States have successfully used a variety of programs to increase multicultural awareness, the best way for Blue Ridge, and then I'll continue with my thesis statement that we just read. So one other thing I want to point out, as I'm working from the hook, which is the quote, to my thesis statement at the end of the paragraph, I do have some sentences that include generally acknowledged opinion. Now, this is a little bit subjective, but I felt completely comfortable saying that we continue to believe that our lives are enriched by new discoveries, by learning more about other cultures, by not being insular and just paying attention to our own culture. So I am making that, I am making it clear that that is a common belief, and that is a good practice to get into. So that would be how you could set up your essay. In the conclusion, you would wrap it all up, and as far as the counter arguments go, there are different ways to handle that. You could include them in the body paragraphs, like when you're talking about how it's inexpensive, you could compare that to the expense of putting on a festival, and things like that. I could point out the weakness of all these other ways to improve multicultural awareness. But I hope that helps, and if you have any questions or you want other resources for how to do this, please let me know, and I'll be glad to point you in the right direction. Thanks.